Okay, let's just see. Let's just see if this is doable.
This will heal you.
Okay, first off, there's no reason to throw a healing orb here. I think this is pretty clear why. No one in your team has taken any damage except Hammond, who's like across the map. There's no way you're gonna heal him with the healing orb. Yeah. Just a general waste of an ability right there. Typically, you don't want to use an orb unless you know that you're gonna get value from it. In this situation, it's very... Next slide, please. Okay, if this... Do you guys want me to continue or stop? We need votes. Because if this isn't going to be helpful for people here, then I don't know what to do. I guess I could go to a different VOD if you really want. Because it's not really about the frame rate, it's more about the decision making, which... Okay. Play ranked. I play ranked a lot. This is a different stream today. I'm not saying I'm not going to play ranked today, just starting out with VODs. Okay. Anyway, VOD and the healing orb there, completely useless.
This will heal you.
Actually, this is getting better now. Slightly. That was not a bad damage orb. Okay. One thing I want to look at here is where your tanks are. Where are your tanks? Okay, seriously, where are your tanks? Did I miss something? Okay, you have Winston Ball. Your Winston's over here. Yeah, so when your Winston dove over there, if it were me, I would have gone and faded after him. But you always want to be careful. What rank? This is 2200. When you're playing with a dive composition, I mean, I'm not going to call this dive because this is gold, and I would not, and you're running not dive DPS and not dive healers except for Lucio. But when you're running with dive tanks who engage by using their movement abilities like this, you want to assist them as much as you can. And this is not super easy all the time with Moira, because once you use your fade, you're super vulnerable, and if your tanks are diving in to make space, they're likely surrounded by a bunch of enemies who would also look to pick you off. So what I recommend here is, yes, fade after the Winston, but still keep a safe distance. You want to keep in mind how long your healing can reach, how effective you can be to heal that Winston, but not standing directly next to him so you get picked off. Like, maybe play around the center thing here so you can not take too much damage. Because your Winston pretty much dies instantly. I think you might have been able to help him there, despite the fact that he was killed by a Reaper. You're probably going to end up losing the fight because your Winston died first, I think. So their Reaper is very aggressive. Let's see if you could have saved your Lucio. No, I think your Lucio got one shot. So your Reaper stuns him and kills him, and then you get flanked by Pharah. It's really hard to say what would have been done differently here because this is such a mess. The main thing I'm focusing on is how the beginning of the fight went down, and your ball is being absolutely useless from what I'm seeing. But your Winston tried to make space. Maybe you could have gotten in voice comms and said, let's go help our Winston out or something, being aggressive with him instead of waiting for the enemy to come and push onto you guys. No comment on the fade? Did they even use fade? Yeah. it wasn't a bad fade to reposition. I guess I'd... Because I guess the reason I didn't comment on it was because the fight's kind of lost anyway. You've lost Winston and Lucio, and they've lost their Reaper, but they still have a Pharah in the air, and like that would be your job to take down Pharah if your McCree can't handle it, because your other DPS is currently a Mei. My theory is that you just shouldn't have been positioned there in the first place. Like, you should have been up with your tanks and used Fade proactively. I would not have even... Like, I feel like the reason you died here is just poor positioning, not necessarily bad Fade usage. Just, if you'd positioned better in the first place, this wouldn't have even happened. That's my opinion. I would consider this positioning very passive. Yeah, because if your tank moves forward, you want to be able to supply some damage to the enemy team. You want to at least put some pressure on them so they can't push forward like this. But yeah, it wasn't a perfect fade, but it wasn't a terrible fade. It just didn't end up working out.
Dead yet. Allow me to repair the damage.
This is an okay healing orb, but yeah, that was a pretty decent healing orb. Because you're gonna have orb back by the time that you want to engage. Again, I'm seeing you play kind of passively here. Yeah, you're playing sort of like a Mercy, and while that's fine and it's safe, you're not going to get as much value playing Moira this way. You could get way more impact if you're playing more aggressively. You're going to hear me use this word a lot, being more aggressive. Pretty much you're positioned in a way where you're always invisible to the enemy. And this will keep you safe. You're not going to die in these situations, but it's not providing that damage impact that you could be providing. Like, I would be up with your tanks, pressuring their shields with pressuring the enemy with right click all the time. You really don't need to be healing them at this point because your team's pushing in, they're not taking tons of damage. You can be providing tons of damage with your right click and damage orbs. Yeah, you're giving way too much respect to the enemy. Like, you guys just killed 2. Yeah, your team is up 2 at this point. 3, the ball just walked off the edge. I would be just like pushing forward really far now, because at this point, even if you die, you're still gonna provide some pressure to the enemy team. Like, you're not taking any space that the enemy is giving to you. If you let the enemy, let's say if the enemy gives up space and you don't take it immediately, that is losing value. I'm gonna come back to like these keywords like value, space, aggressiveness. Just like if you see that the enemy is retreating, you need to reclaim that space that they're giving you. You can't just I guess be nice about it. There we go. Okay. So while I did like this aggressive fade, you didn't really do much with it. It seems like you aggressively faded to heal your team. I mean, you're not doing bad with healing resource management. I mean, that damage orb didn't do anything. I mean, your team's doing fine. My only concern is that you're not carrying hard enough at your given rank with Moira. You're sort of you're just kind of coasting along with your team, playing sort of passive. This is really easy to end up losing games with this type of play style if you're not gonna like really take hold of your team and make proactive decisions to start team fights early.
Understood.
Do stuff like that. You really want to set the pace of the game.
I'm restored. My will.
Whose VOD is this? I'm reviewing this for Santa Cruz Overwatch. I'm a coach for them.
Is my will. Allow me to repair the damage.
Once again, you're holding so passively here. There's really not much else I can really explain. Holding this passively is just going to... In my opinion, it's just not how you want to play Moira. It's just not gonna... To me, it's not rewarding. I don't know what else to say. You need to hold up with your tanks, and if your tanks aren't going to be aggressive, you might even want to push past your tanks. This requires a little bit more game sense. You have to keep in mind all their abilities and stuns if you're going to be extra aggressive, but at this point, I'm just going to recommend that you hold at least with your tanks. This does mean you have to turn around to heal people if they take damage behind you, but this isn't incredibly difficult to pick up if you want to practice that. I'm confused by this. Okay, so the first thing that you did with this fade to the left side, I don't understand that. It's a good thing that you had fade ready for this Reaper. Yeah, I'm just gonna note how you haven't used your ultimate yet. I mean, the thing is, your team is doing fine, but this is a resource that you can use instead of other ultimates that are more valuable than Coalescence. You can deny team fights with Coalescence. That's how you want to use it. So your team doesn't have to use their own ultimates. Yeah, I just see incredibly passive gameplay. I'm going to comment about Coalescence. So before the enemy even started to engage, I would have been at their front line using Coalescence Damage Orb, pushing them back. You probably could even get some kills off that. Just like being really aggressive. Just not allowing the enemy to reclaim any space. I would encourage your team to hold the right choke at this point. I mean, not at this point, but a little bit before here. I wish I could hear comms. Comms would be really helpful. Like, I want to know what your team is saying, if anything. Okay. So while you did get some good value from that ultimate, you used it more defensively than offensively. Like, you used it I think you used it in response to your Lucio using beat, right? Okay, it was a good ultimate. I just don't agree with the reasoning behind using it this late into the team fight. Like it was a good ult to reclaim. And what I'm noticing after you use the ultimate and you've pretty much killed everyone on their team is you still don't go up to reclaim the space. You're still holding back with your team. Okay, your soldier just ran into... Like, you should, at this point, you should be up there pressuring them. You could get easy kill on that Pharah. Like, look at their team comp. They have Ana, Moira, Pharah. So really the only person who can heal the Moira effectively is going to be the Ana. And I wouldn't expect their Ana to hit every single shot on this Pharah in gold. So I would be really trying to put pressure on their DPS, on their healers, just something that you're not doing. There's a lot of downtime with your playstyle. This is an important concept to understand, downtime and uptime. So think about it this way. So with the Sombra's recent change, where her translocator now goes on cooldown the moment that you use it, the moment that you place it. This effectively increases her uptime, meaning that she can be in the fight more often. She doesn't have to wait for the cooldown. Think about it compared to your playstyle, where you are kind of waiting around for something to happen before going after an objective. You want to be doing as much stuff as you can all the time. This means getting value from healing and damage as much as possible. I just see a lot of times where you're not doing anything, and just think about what you can be doing at all times. This means holding more aggressively. Like here, nothing. It's a good kill on the ball. I feel like a lot of what I'm going to be covering is a lot of basic game sense rather than Moira's specific game sense.
Group up with me.
But we'll see.
Get into position.
Not a terrible healing orb, but you really should have just pushed forward and tried to keep your Sigma alive here. Like, there's no reason not to use Fade at this point to just try and save your Sigma. If you don't manage to save him, oh well, you're gonna have to wait for him to respawn anyway before you go in. There's literally no reason to let your Sigma die here.
Into position. Enemies here. Join me.
Again, you're holding really far back. There's no reason to hold this far back. You're beyond safe. Like, just play around the choke points. If you need to fade away, you have that ability. I just don't see any thought going into being more aggressive, holding more aggressive positioning, just denying the enemy space that they don't deserve. One thing with letting people have space, don't give enemies space unless they deserve it. Like, if you see their Widow popping off, okay, maybe back off a little bit, hold some corners, but if you don't see that happening, there's absolutely no reason to give them that space. They don't deserve it. Just take it for yourself.
Let's see you get past this.
This doesn't mean play stupidly. It just means that you still have to play smart. You have to dodge abilities, but if they're not a god player, you don't have to give them that space.
Strike flows from
Just like, again, a lot of these tips I'm going over can be applied to many heroes. One of the biggest issues with lower ranked players is not their character specific issues. It's more just general game sense and decision making. So you're going to hear me talk about a lot of points that can be applied across the board.
Prepare the damage. This will restore you.
Barrier in place.
Freeze! Don't move!
Gale the behold.
Okay, you see Reaper behind them. Reaper made a mistake. You should have used ult earlier. This isn't a bad time to use it, but let's see when you got it.
Tell me how this begins.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I don't really like your team's positioning here. Your Sigma's holding in a very bad spot. So I would have used ult earlier. You're using ult to heal your Sigma up first. Now you're going after the ball. I like how you weren't switching targets. You were just going straight after the ball. But that really wasn't the best target to focus on. So here, yes, the best target to focus on is ball. Now, the moment that you get into this open area here, you can see that their Moira is healing up everyone around here. I would switch focus to her, or to this 200 HP target who's at half health. But going after ball, the thing is, if you're gonna go after a tank with coalescence, you have to be aware of the healing that's being pumped into those tanks. It's a lot easier to kill a 200 HP target with coalescence than a tank being healed by whoever. Because healing is harder to aim at smaller targets, and especially at lower ranks, you're going to see this occur. That it's going to be a lot easier to kill smaller targets and weaker targets, as in having less health, than a big target like ball, who's going to get easily healed back up if they stand next to their main healer. Yeah, I would have gone after this Moira here because they're really low. Okay, their Pharah is posing some problems. Your team is just everywhere. I'm not even going to recommend positioning for this. Oh, I mean, I'll try. Like you're doing the best you can right now with positioning. Your positioning is pretty good right now. I'm not going to blame you for every single lost fight here. I don't think this was your fault. Your team was just very uncoordinated. What would help though is if you are using voice comms, is to call out some certain wait. Oh, it says objective secured. I was super confused. No, it's as the team switched, of course. Hey, Soldger. Yeah, just using voice comms. Target priority, giving your team something to shoot.
Analyzing location.
Or actually, I was watching ML7's stream, and he had this good point. If you can't get people to focus on a certain target, call out that enemy has an ultimate. This is really true. That people will go for a target that has ultimate if you call that out, more so than if you just call out kill this person. Like. Just like do what you can to make them focus one target. And it sometimes doesn't even matter what target it is, as long as you get your team to focus on something. I mean, of course you want to be smart with target priority, but as long as they're at least focusing the same targets, you're probably going to end up on top with as opposed to the enemy team who's probably not focusing targets. Not a bad damage orb. It was not aimed at all. I like you're going after this Reaper. I hope that you were calling that out. Ooh, your Ryan got screwed. Thank you so much, Scorper, for the Twitch Prime. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I really don't like this. It's not that you're playing bad, it's just that your team is so split. Your Rhine did fall down, and you have a ball who I don't see anywhere. Okay, your ball's over here. But this means that you have to frontline as Moira, and you have nowhere to go back to except off point. God, I really dislike how your tanks are playing. Like, I understand your Rhine fell down, but at this point your ball should be trying to take space and not fleeing with full health. Okay, let's talk about this ult. So you get 1 pick, you get 2 picks, you get 3 picks. So your team is up 3 people right now, and you use your ultimate. This is not a good ultimate. Typically, when your team is up 3 people, there's almost no reason that your team should lose the fight, unless they have a super powerful ultimate. Like if their Reaper has Death Blossom, okay, maybe they might get a 6-man Death Blossom. That's extremely rare. Like I don't think there's a reason to use ultimate. Just try and keep in mind who's alive on the enemy team. Even if you have teammates who are low, at this point, if you end up losing a teammate, it's not going to be the end of the world. It'd be much better to just let them respawn than to use your ultimate just to save them.
Touch from afar. I'm restoring.
That Lucio was so low, you could finish that kill. Oh, your Lucio. I'm so confused. That was your McCree? Yeah. Okay, your Lucio died fast. This is really bad because you're running a Reinhardt.
We must all make sacrifices and join with me.
That wasn't really completely your fault that you lost that fight.
Allow me to repair.
Your team was super spread out. So yeah, 2 of your teammates fed in that instance. I would not fault yourself for losing that one team fight. I don't see any ways that you really could have drastically improved there other than having better mechanics and possibly keeping your tanks up while you wait for the respawns. What you can always do is just jump in voice comms, tell people to back up a little bit. Like if you get 2 people picked off your team, it's usually smart to give away some space to the enemy while you try and regroup, but still try and contest point. Of course, this is not always easy, and you're probably just going to get rolled over after you lose 2 people. Your team didn't really have any ults either. Yeah, this is gold. Okay, I would have ulted way before this. The moment you got your ult, you should have ulted here. Despite the fact the Reaper's is fading onto your team, you should know that he probably has Death Blossom at this point. It's been about, I'd say, a minute or so into the fight. No, more than a minute. You should expect some ultimates. This is the first time I'll bring up ult tracking as something that's really important. You should totally know what this Reaper is doing right now. There's no question about what this Reaper is doing right now. At this point, you need to use your ultimate and heal up your Rein as quick as possible before the Death Blossom comes. You don't have any stuns except Roadhog Hook. This is going to be an issue because you're not going to be able to stop the Death Blossom. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say here because Coalescence by itself is not gonna out damage Reaper. I mean, it's not gonna out heal Reaper ult. But if you don't use your ultimate here, you're pretty much just throwing away this fight. I would just say go for the ultimate. Okay, so your Hog actually gets the hook off. In this situation, if you were to have used ultimate right as you got it, your Rein probably wouldn't have died, and you could have pushed in it at this point. Your Lucio's feeding again.
This will restore you.
I'd definitely say that you could have saved your Rein there. I didn't like that fade. So important thing about using fade when you're trying to initiate a team fight, you want to save it for the last possible second before you need to use it. It's your only escape tool. Like, you don't get any second chances with that. If you're pushing in, expect some focus on the enemy healers, expect some focus on your healers. You don't want to use fade unless you really have to. Even when... So part of the reason in GM I'm able to get away with such aggressive play is I'll typically never use fade aggressively. Unless I'm about to use my ultimate. You always want to have that escape tool for when you might have gotten yourself in a little bit too deep. You never want to use fade aggressively. Unless you have ultimate. This is something to just try and get ingrained in your mind. Because the one thing you can do to help your team the most as a healer is to not die. And if you end up using fade for no reason or using fade aggressively, you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position where you're going to end up getting picked off. It's a good beat. Your Ryan died again. You're out of heals. Hold on, how did this happen? Okay, here's where you should have been getting more resources. Okay, let me talk about something. I just need to get some water. So I'm a firm believer that healing resource management doesn't have much to do with anything but positioning. If you're positioned aggressively, you are not going to run out of healing resources. If you run out of healing resources when you're positioned aggressively, you probably have a really bad team. In this situation, you are low on healing resources. You're standing kind of far back from your team. Let's see how this pans out. You get some healing resources off the Reaper. At this point, you're still standing off point. Your Rhine is on the other side of point. This is making a lot of space for your team. You should take advantage of this. Despite the fact that the Reaper is really menacing, you have Fade available. You should try and go up to your Rhine. Not like all the way, just max healing range and try and heal him up. Also, you're a little bit low on healing resources. There's plenty of enemies here to get healing resources off of.
This will heal you.
Now you have everyone in your team just got a beat. This is the perfect opportunity to get more healing resources back. People are going to be healed up, I mean not healed up, but buffered up for the next few seconds. You should be getting healing resources back during this time. Yeah, here's where I think you messed up. You didn't do that. You went ahead and tried to heal up your Rhine. And I think because you didn't have enough healing resources and because your Rhine didn't have any sort of peel, he ended up dying there. I don't think it's necessarily your fault that the Rhine died there. He had nothing to help him with that Reaper. Lucio could have booped, Hog could have hooked, Mei could have walled or frozen. There's a couple things that could have happened here. Moira doesn't really have much peel potential beyond just direct healing. So it's not necessarily your fault that Ryan died there, but it is your fault that you're running extremely low on healing resources. You had the opportunity to get more healing resources and you didn't. Thanks J-Ray for the follow. Lucio. Not a great healing orb. Of course, I think you might have thrown it at the Lucio thinking that it was going to save him. I don't know. The Lucio had already died by the time that you threw the orb. Just a general waste of an orb there.
Oh my.
Thanks Domain for the follow. Okay. Let's just see how you use this. I don't think I would have. I don't think I would have ulted here.
Surrender to my will.
Yeah, you got next to no value from that ultimate. Let's just think about. I'm going to focus on tick damage and healing that's being done by this ultimate. Let's see what happens with this. Healing, nothing, nothing, nothing. Damage, nothing, 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 nothing. Damage, nothing, nothing, nothing. Damage, nothing. Healing. So I would say that you used about 2 seconds of that ultimate in terms of actual use. And in terms of damage, you probably got off less than 1 second of damage total in that 8-second ultimate, I would say. And in that 1 second of damage that was done, I would say half of it was done on the Orisa using Fortify. So that's pretty much nothing. So I'd say only about half a second of that ultimate was actually valuable, in my opinion. Because I'm not going to talk about healing, because you have a decent amount of healing resource that you could have used instead of using your ultimate for healing. I'm very adamant in the fact that I think that ultimate should never be used for healing. If you can heal up your teammates without using your ultimate, I think that it's a waste to use ultimate just for healing if you have resources.
Break up here. Enemy contact.
Touch from afar.
That's a good damage orb.
Your strength ends.
This is okay. I think if this hasn't been said already inside your in-game comms, you have to be really clear with your team that this Reaper is a big issue. I mean, they may realize this already, but just calling it out, making everyone focus Reaper, because I don't think anyone else on their team is really posing that much of an issue. Maybe they're Pharah, but she's not really doing a lot. And also, your Lucio kind of feeds a lot. I don't know, I don't feel like there's much you could do about that, except know that the Pharaoh was gonna ult soon. So it's a ult tracking
We must challenge our assumptions.
issue, knowing that the Pharaoh has ult and she's gonna look for a good point to use that. But she kinda killed everyone on your team, so I'm not gonna fault you for dying to that. Of course, if you survived, maybe you could have saved someone, but I highly doubt it. Moira does not out-heal Barrage whatsoever. And if you're going to try and focus a Pharah who's using Barrage, you're not going to kill her super quickly.
Surrender to my will.
This is good. I really like the timing of this ult. Unfortunately, you're the only one who got kills with that. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna go back and talk about this ult. A little bit early, so I'm really for this type of ult usage. It's just a little bit early because you really want to have a good view of what's going on, where the enemies are headed. You want to use every second of that ultimate to do some damage. I see maybe you're trying to clear out the mines for this. This can be done without using ultimate. You can just use your regular Braddock to clear out mines. Yeah, so if you were to have used your ultimate, whoa, that went back far. Instead of right here, you use it like right here. You've already used about a third of your ult. you could have had more value from your ultimate if you used it a little bit later. Your Ryan gets a good chatter off. Get kill on Lucio. You kill in the Moira. The Reaper is in the backline terrorizing your team. The Siren's in the background. Okay, this is really nice. It's really nice. So my only issue here, well, team fight hasn't ended. It's just that you used, wow, those beats. I don't like the ultimate usage. It was a little bit early. Other than that, it was a really good usage of your ultimate. Really aggressive. I like that. That Reaper needs to die. That is insane. I feel like your team either can't aim at the Reaper or I don't know what's going on here. That Reaper should have died. Just like you need to call out like focus Reaper when he comes out of Fade or Wraith. Just focus him as hard as you can. That should be your call outs right there. Again, you use ult a little bit early, but this is really not that bad. Yeah, nice job. I will note that for me, reviewing, like, I think like bronze, silver, gold, sometimes plat VOD reviews. It's just not about the Moira specific plays, it's more about just general game sense. I've said this already, but just for the people who watching this, just know that if you're playing other heroes, a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, like ult timing, positioning, calling out stuff, this can be applied to any hero. I haven't really talked about orb usage that much, because I just don't think that that is what's holding this player back.
Get into position.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird fade, but it's not that bad. Your Ashe got really good dynamite. That was a good damage orb onto the ball. Okay, this is what I see a lot of Moiras struggle with. When you're trying to heal a really small target, it's like 200 HP, and you end up using about your entire healing bar on that single target because it's kind of difficult to aim with. Oh, see you later, Felipe. Hold on. Some more water. Yeah. So you're using like so much healing resource, and this target's still just barely hanging on, and he ends up dying anyway. And now at this point, you're completely out of healing resources. So if you're having trouble with this, you don't want to hold down healing resources just like completely full on mouse one. That's gonna end up wasting all of your resources, and you're not gonna be able to hit stuff. If you're having trouble aiming at single targets like this, you have to pulse your heals. Not very slowly, but just work on pulsing your heals. Maybe it's kind of hard to describe the timing of it, but it's like you're firing shots at your teammates, not tracking them with a beam. So you're firing projectile shots at your teammates every like 0.25 seconds. So you just like click, 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 click. But every click, you're firing a predictive projectile shot at that teammate to heal them up. So you don't have to focus on every single movement that they're making to accurately track them. You're just you're trying to fire those healing shots at them to keep them healed. This will to help conserve resources. Also realize that maybe you don't have the mechanics to keep someone alive, and that's not terrible. It's not the end of the world. But if you don't think you can keep someone up, focus on something else that you need to be doing. Maybe that teammate might get mad at you, but in the long run, that would have been a better use of your resources. Because the soldier ends up dying anyway. I mean, it's not a good decision to let a teammate die for no reason, but if you are helping other teammates get kills, while this teammate is creating space by being focused, it's not the end of the world if they die. It's hard to describe.
This objective must be ours. Thank you.
Because I would say, if you were better mechanically with your healing beam, that teammate would have been healed up pretty quickly, despite the fact they were being focused by a Winston. You could have kept them at decently high health for a while, and then had your team just kill off the Winston after he used his bubble and stuff like that.
Barrier activated.
You use fate for no reason. I mean, your soldier is not really positioning well himself, so yeah. If you have a teammate who's positioned poorly, like this soldier has been the last two of his deaths, you don't always want to dedicate your resources to that, because with this he was dead anyway. Like, your soldier should really be taking high ground. Just like, it's not your job always to make up for teammates' bad decisions. You want to support them if they're going to pop off, but if they're just going to end up feeding, you're really better off helping out other teammates. Or popping off yourself. Yeah. I know what to say about this. Your soldier just was positioned really, really badly. Again, with this fade usage, I'm not super thrilled about it. You faded into a very vulnerable spot. There's an Ana here. She could sleep you. She could anti you. You're only at 100 health. Your team is super spread out. If you don't have ultimate, I wouldn't even try to go for this aggressive of a fade position. I probably just would have tried to back out a little bit. You get antied and yeah. Your team was positioned so badly there anyway, but that fade was not very good. You should have faded into safety. Sound effect. Okay, you're calling for your ultimate's ready. I like that. You're planning on using it aggressively, I can tell. You're still positioned super far away from your team. Yeah, I would have used it earlier. So your team, look how far your team is pushed up here. I would try to be with them, hold a really good angle, and use your ultimate before your team even pushes in. So you can make space for your team to push in without them having to make any space themselves. Because then they can further maximize their potential at making space here by using your ultimate rather than just feeding. Your hog is doing yeah, your hog did really good ult there. This was good. Your target priority was really not, it was could use some work. Let's see. Typically, if the enemy has a Moira, you either want to wait out their ultimate or ult before they do. I think that they ulted right about the same time though. Yeah, you guys used your ult at the same time. So while I would have ulted a little bit earlier, you're probably not going to get tons of value in terms of damage with this ultimate because they have another Moira who's ulting. One thing about when going against another Moira is that if they use their ultimate at the same time you use yours, both teams are probably going to get 0 value from those ultimates besides healing. The only possible thing you might be able to do with it is if you see a teammate behind the Moira. In a lot of lower ranks and even in some higher ranks, you'll see the Moira who's using Coalescence not turn around to heal. And you can capitalize on this by spraying down the teammates behind them and possibly getting a kill. I don't see any in this situation though. It's a good healing orb. This is another point where I see that you've used Fade to get out of a situation, but your positioning after you come out of Fade is not much better. Yeah, like this isn't gonna keep you safe. What I would have done is Fade back, or Fade off point somewhere, so you're not gonna receive tons of focus. If you must Fade into a risky position, do it so that the enemy is going to be led away from the objective, and your team can then use that space that you've created by drawing enemies off point to maybe get some kills. I would have faded somewhere off point. This doesn't mean that you're ignoring your teammates and letting them die by themselves. It just means that you're fading off point in a way that you can still help your team, but you're not going to receive intense focus unless the enemy is willing to sacrifice space on the point. That was a good kill on the Winston. Nice. I don't like this. You heard that someone was contesting point, but you didn't turn around until like 2 seconds later. Oh no. Yeah, not much you can do there.
That changes my thinking.
Nano Reaper.
You hear that?
My will. I require healing.
Anyone needs
Okay, your team shouldn't go this way. But what I'm also seeing is you're holding back. You're really holding back with your positioning.
anyone needs
Yeah, like you should be up here. You should be up like up near their choke, putting pressure on with damage. You should be watching your teammates, seeing where they're going. It's a passive way of playing. I get that if you were to be holding up further, you would have to really pay close attention to where your teammates are, making sure they're not making any stupid plays that you have to bail them out with. Like, you're just using a lot of healing resources that you don't have to use here. Yeah, the past 5 seconds I've seen you do very little value in heals, and you weren't even trying to do much damage, except for that one damage orb. It's very difficult to try to analyze like what the correct play would have been, because your team isn't really that coordinated. I don't know if this makes sense, but when I'm reviewing a master to GM VOD, it's a lot easier to tell the player what they could have done better. In this situation, I can just see what you're doing wrong. And I don't think it's like incredibly helpful. Like, I'm trying to be as helpful as I can. I would have just tried to hold more aggressively. Like, just always think about trying to get as little downtime as possible with your abilities. You have your ultimate. We'll focus on that. That's a good damage orb. That's a really good damage orb to use with your ultimate. Your Lucio fed again. I would say you lost this not because of your ultimate, but because your team was very, very split. Your Lucio went in, died first. Your Orisa and Hog were not playing together. Not that this is the end of the world, but you didn't heal up your Orisa when she was getting focused by Reaper. But I don't think you would have been able to heal her anyway, given that Reaper's DPS out damages your healing. I think that Orisa was kind of screwed anyway, but that was also her fault because she was positioned terribly. I don't know. I don't think this was your fault here that you lost this fight. I think you played well. I just think your team was very uncoordinated there.
Victory.
Okay, overall, I think you just need to play a little bit more aggressively. Once again, like I think I say this with a lot of VOD reviews I do, but me viewing one game is not going to give me a entire view of how you play Moira, because you're limited by I'm not going to say you're limited by your teammates, but you're limited by your teammates in terms of me being able to see exactly how you play Moira in all situations. So what I saw from here is that you don't take as much space as you could when the enemy gives it to you. This could come from not recognizing that the space exists when it's being provided, or that you just don't want to risk any risky positioning. Another thing is with your fades, you need to fade into a safe position if you're going to use fade to escape. Generally, ultimate usage was okay. I would say remember to stick onto one target, and make sure that one target is capable of being killed, whatever that means to you. Usually it means going after a squishy target rather than a tank, going after healers specifically. If they have a Moira, you might want to focus her, make her use her fade, and then focus her down after she uses it. Calling out targets to focus I think would be really helpful. Sometimes it can be kind of tilting, because when you try really hard in a game and your teammates don't pull their own weight, it can get super tilting. Damage orb usage and healing orb is okay. I probably would have used more healing more damage orbs, but because you are positioned so passively, in my opinion, I would have expected more healing orbs, because your resources were more difficult to get back given more passive positioning. Coalescence, fade, orbs, positioning, game sense. Okay, in terms of game sense, you should be tracking ultimates. I think that you probably were to some extent, but there's a couple times where they were pretty telegraphed ultimates I saw that you didn't completely avoid until you reacted to them. You should be a little bit more proactive in predicting enemy ultimates. Yeah, I think that's about it. Well, I hope that helped some people out there. Hope this was good.